Okay, so I just watched Shafrillis Productions' recent video on which Smash characters have canonically eaten a burger. And somebody in the comments for that video said somebody should do a video on which characters have canonically got a job. So this video, we will be going through this whole roster of Super Smashy Bros and be going over which characters have canonically got a job. So starting off with Mario, he is of course a plumber. Plus he becomes a doctor with Dr. Mario. So like in about 2 seconds we can easily tick off Mario as being a Smash character who has a job. So same with Luigi, he's also a plumber and also became a doctor, so he has a job. So Donkey Kong, again I don't need to go very far because at the start of Donkey Kong Bonanza, he is working in the mines to find some bananas, so he has had a job. So Link in multiple games has been shown to be a knight, like before he fully becomes Link. So even if that's kind of more being like forcibly recruited as opposed to filling out a job application, regardless, Link has technically had a job because I assume the Royal Knights of Hyrule are paid, so therefore that is a job. Samus is a bounty hunter, so that also kind of marks off Zero Suit Samus. She is a bounty hunter, that is her job, so has a job. Dark Samus, I don't think Dark Samus, like, unless you also count kind of being, because I mean, I think Dark Samus is, I guess, loosely a mercenary, but has not, like, fully had a job, so is more just an evil entity, so I don't think Dark Samus has had a job. So, Yoshi, I don't know about before Mario Kart World, but in Mario Kart World, he runs a whole fast food chain, so Yoshi has a job, working a 9 to 5 in McDonald's. Kirby. So Kirby is an odd one. This probably is more, like, examples of Kirby having a job, but certainly in multiple Kirby games, he kind of at least competes in, like, food races and various competitions in the mini-games. Plus he helps Magalore with Merry Magaland in the remake of Return to Dreamland. So although Kirby hasn't had, like, one full-time job, I would say that Kirby has at least had a bunch of part-time jobs. Fox is also a mercenary. That is his job. So he has a job. So the Pokemon are quite funny. Pokemon Cafe Remix is a mobile game that exists where the Pokemon get jobs. Also because they are technically competing for sport, like in most cases when they compete in Pokemon battles. I'd also say that technically counts as a job. The issue is that I don't think the Pokemon are ever actually paid, so they kind of count as have a job, but it's like unforced labor, basically. Ness is a child, so by legal rules should not have a job, but and I don't think he does, because he's mostly just adventuring around, protecting people, you know, from like aliens or whatever the heck happens in Earthbound. So I don't think Ness has a job. Captain Falcon, again, is a mercenary. Like, what is with all the mercenaries in this game, bro? So he has a job. Again, Jigglypuff has a job by proxy if you count Cafe Remix and Pokemon as being battles as being a sport. Both princesses are princesses, which is technically not a job in, like, the traditional sense, but ruling over a kingdom, I think, counts as a job, so they have a job. That also applies to Bowser, since he is also the ruler of his kingdom, so I would also say that counts as a job. Ice Climbers, it's not ever specified whether they're climbing the ice for fun or whether that is their job, but I'm just going to assume that that's their job, so therefore they have a job. Zelda and Sheik are the same person, and again, she's a princess and ruler of Hyrule, so has a job. We've already covered Dr. Mario. Pichu is a Pokemon, so has been in a bunch of mobile spin-off games. Falco, again, is a mercenary, so has a job. So pretty much all the Fire Emblem characters come under the same category as Link, of they technically work as knights. Well, they're either members of the royal family, so fall under the same category as Peach and Daisy, or they're knights that work for an army, which I assume pays them, so therefore, even if they it was more like a forced recruitment thing, they all technically have a job, so both of you have a job. A young Link is a child, but again, is like a knight and stuff, so I guess he half has a job. Ganondorf is technically a ruler of a kingdom, so I would kind of want to give him that, but he is far more of because Bowser, truly does care about his people and actually runs, a more, for a better description, coherent society, whereas Ganondorf, is just, public menace #1. So I don't, even if he is technically a ruler of a kingdom, I don't really want to class him as having a job, because he's more ruling it because he's evil than because he actually wants to rule a kingdom. Lucas, again, is a child, so, he shouldn't have a job, whether he does or not. Sonic, again, I'd say kind of falls under the category of Kirby, of not having one, specific job, but kind of doing a bunch of small, random, literal side quests for people over the various Sonic games, normally which give him rings as a reward for doing them, or some other thing as a reward, so by rule of that, he's technically had a part-time job. King Dedede, again, is a king, so, royal member. Olimar, explicitly the whole reason he gets stuck on Earth in the first place is because he works for some company that investigates. I'm not quite sure what his company does, but it does stuff, so he has a job. Same with Alf, they both have a job. Lucario, again, is a Pokemon, so depending on whether you count mobile spin-offs or Pokemon battles being a sport, then he has had a job. Rob is literally a robot toy, so has not had a job. I mean, then again, I say that, but in the game that he is from, the whole thing was the toy figure does move in order to, place blocks, which then I think also get, placed in his game. So I guess he kind of has a job in the point, he does do something, but it's not, a paid job, because he's a toy. So he has toy functionality, not a job. Toon Link is one of the Links that has more explicitly had a job, because he runs a train in Spirit Tracks, and is also, I don't know if you count being a pirate as a job, but if you do, then he's also been a pirate technically, so he has had multiple jobs. Wolf, again, is a mercenary. Villager, you become the mayor of a town, which I'm counting as a job, so therefore he has had a job. Same with Isabelle, who is also your secretary, so she has had a job. Mega Man, I don't, unless there's some random spin-off game that I'm not thinking of, Mega Man doesn't have a job. He more just fights the evil robots because he's I was gonna say a superhero, but a good guy. He doesn't get paid. He probably, similar to Sonic, has probably done side quests in some of his games, but outside of that, potentially he hasn't had a full job, at least. I mean, Wii Fit Trainer is literally a fitness trainer, so has a job. Rosalina is, again, a member of a royal family, so has had a job. Little Mac boxes professionally, so that is a job. Greninja, again, bunch of mobile spin-offs, so has had a job. Palutena is a goddess and ruler of a kingdom, so again, I'm counting that as a job. Pac-Man falls under the same category as Sonic and Mega Man, of not really having a proper job, but has done multiple, side quest part-time jobs for money. And also he did have that one, knockoff Mario Party game where he became, a real estate developer, so I will also count that as a job. Again, Robin forcibly recruited into the army or something, so, has a job. Shulk, I would say, comes under the same category as the Fire Emblem characters of kind of joining an army, except Shulk isn't, a soldier initially, if I recall. He just kind of decides to join himself. So I don't actually know if Shulk is paid, or whether he more did it voluntarily to be, a nice, upstanding, helpful citizen. So I'll put Shulk on the kind of has a job. I mean, he also, again, in the Xenoblade games, you do a bunch of side quests, so again, you could probably count one of them as having a job. Bowser Jr. is a child, but has, again, kind of been in a bunch of spin-off Mario games where he's kind of done things that I guess would constitute as jobs, so I will count Bowser Jr. Duck Hunt duo. Now, you could say they don't have a job, but since the whole premise of Duck Hunt is you going after the ducks and then the dog from Duck Hunt, like, helps you, I at least think the dog has a job. I don't know about the dog, but I will count the dog as having a job, even if he's not paid, because, you know, he's a dog. Ryu and Ken professionally fight, so, again, that is their job, so they have jobs. Cloud, again, falls under the I'm a soldier in the army category, so technically has a job. I think I just missed out an entire row because I'm silly. So Roy and Qualm fall under the, again, military category. Mr. Game & Watch has had various jobs. That's what, like, most of his moveset is based off of. Meta Knight is a mercenary, so he has a job. Pit, again, is part of Palutena's army, and gets explicitly looked after by Palutena. Even if he's not paid, he's still kind of paid in, like, love, accommodation, and food. So I'm counting that as a job. Dark Pit also works for Viridi and, like, the villain of Kid Icarus Uprising as, like, an evil minion, and then kind of joins Palutena, so I'm counting that as a job. We've already covered Zero Suit Samus. Wario has been a pirate, if you count that. If not, again, he's been in numerous spin-off games where he effectively has a job. Snake has been in the military. He is a soldier. That is a job. Ike, again, mercenary/soldier, that is a job. Pokemon trainer, again, he is a child, but I will count him as having a job because he does basically do Pokemon, like, professionally, and you win money upon winning Pokemon battles, so that is a job. Diddy Kong runs a whole racing arena in Donkey Kong Bonanza, so that counts Diddy Kong as having a job because he runs a racetrack. Yeah, anyway, going back down here, so yeah, Corrin also falls under the Fire Emblem category, so has a job. Bayonetta, again, as a mercenary, so has a job. Inkling, again, the fights in Splatoon are counted as a sport in universe, therefore I assume the Inklings get paid, so that is their job. Ridley is a pirate, which is debatable if that is a job, but he technically has a job. Again, Simon and Richter both fall under the military/mercenary categories, so they also both have a job. Richter, I think, more so than Simon, but still, because Richter does get, like, explicitly paid to hunt vampires. I'm not entirely sure about Simon, but I'm counting them both. King K. Rool is, again, a pirate and a ruler of a kingdom, so if you count either of those as a job, then he has had a job, otherwise he hasn't. We already covered Isabelle, she's the mayor's assistant. Incineroar, again, fights for sport. Piranha Plant is an iffy one. If Bowser employs his minions to work for him, then Piranha Plant has had a job. I'd also say PT Piranha falls under that category. However, Piranha Plant was also in Mario Kart World, and again, in the universe of Mario Kart, racing is considered a sport. So and you get coins while racing, so which is payment, so therefore Piranha Plant has had a job in professional sports. He's also played tennis and been in Mario Party, so Joker, you can get multiple jobs in the Persona games. That's like half the whole, like, thing you can do in the game, so yes, he has had multiple jobs. Hero, all the heroes in this game also fall under the whole mercenary/army soldier category, so they kind of have a job. Banjo and Kazooie do, again, like, race in both their own game and various other games, because I think they appeared in, like, a Sonic racing game at one point. And assuming that those rules are the same as in Mario Kart, where, like, the racing in universe is a sport, then Banjo and Kazooie have had a job because they've been professional race car drivers. Terry, again, like Ryu and Ken, is a professional fighter, so has had a job. Byleth, mercenary/army soldier, so job. Min Min, again, professional fighter, so has had a job. Steve, because you can technically do anything in Minecraft, you could build a shop and then work in said shop, thus giving you a job. Plus, the movie version of Steve also had a job before he went to the Minecraft world, so I will count him as having a job. Alex, again, if you were to play as Alex and build a shop and then work in said shop, she has a job, otherwise she doesn't. and Enderman and Zombie do not have jobs because they are mindless creatures. Sephiroth, again, falls under the army soldier category, although he is then, like, evil. He did start off as, like, an army soldier, so he has had a job. Pyra and Mithra are technically, like, AI robots. They do, I guess, work, technically, for Rex. But that's, like, a whole philosophical discussion that I'm not going into, so they sort of have a job in the point that they do have a purpose, but because they're robots, I don't think they're paid, so forced labor. Kazuya, again, is a professional fighter, so has a job. Sora is a child, however, you can work in, like, Remy's restaurant in the Kingdom Hearts games, alongside doing, again, a bunch of side quests, so he's had at least one full-time job and multiple part-time jobs, so has had jobs. The Miis have been in so many games by this point that they have guaranteedly had a job, because, like, Tomodachi Life, you can have jobs. Again, if you count sports as a job, then Wii Sports can, so yeah, they are easily covered. So yeah, pretty much every character in Smash Bros. Has had a job.